Hello, dear friends. Today we are excited to present to you the most important moments from the press conference, translated into English. During this press conference, many current and significant topics that concern us all were discussed. We hope you enjoy our video. We wish you a pleasant viewing experience. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on all our new content, and we would greatly appreciate your likes. And now, we invite you to watch. Enjoy.
Good morning, everyone. To begin with, I want to greet and thank the CEAL authorities for the organization, the invitation to this event, and also to all the businessmen present here, for having bet and continuing to bet on investment and trade both in this and in the rest of the countries of the region. Today we are gathered in this space by a common vision regarding life, which has to do with the role played by entrepreneurs in society. And as the title of this 35th Assembly suggests, the economic paradigm shift that Argentina is going through, and that we hope will spread to the rest of the region and also to the world. We are talking about the paradigm shift because, simply put, Argentina decided 10 months ago to leave behind the recipes that impoverished it for more than 100 years to start applying the ideas of freedom, growth and progress, which are the same ideas that lifted 90% of the world's population out of poverty. In the last 300 years, there is an old saying that credibility and trust go up the stairs but down the elevator. And Argentina's credibility, after being the biggest serial defaulter in modern history, and incurring a practically uninterrupted century of fiscal deficits and systematic violations of property rights, has been completely destroyed in the last 40 years. Moderna? Imagine how bad things were in the country of the so-called social justice, which is unjust and has nothing social about it. Because it is deeply antisocial, because it is based on theft and unequal treatment before the law. The citizens elected the first libertarian liberal president in history, without a political party, governors, or mayors. Obviously, under normal conditions of pressure and temperature, there are no libertarian liberal presidents. So, basically, we had to do a lot of things wrong for me to be here. In fact, when I was giving in my other life, when I was giving economics lectures, I said that I was a type 2 mistake. Because I did everything wrong, and it turned out well. And you imagine being, dude, in general, economists are not very popular people, let's say. In addition, if you look inside the economists themselves, there is a group of nerds who are, let's say, those who do mathematical economics, and on top of that, let's say, dedicate myself to economic growth as a specialization in a country that is sick of Keynesianism. I mean, think only for 5 minutes. Something else just happened to me that I can't replicate. And I who start in terms of 100 years, 200, 1,000, well, 2,000. I left. It's not a joke, it's part of the performance. And also, to be a liberal in a country that was basically tainted by over 100 years of socialism. So I really did everything to make people hate me, but it backfired, and I ended up being president. The most voted in history. But clearly then, deep down, what one has to understand, that this is that people said enough to politicians and their little games. And meant it. Because such a slap at politics, and the analog red circle, means that people are really very tired, and really got tired. In the 10 months that we have been in office, we have implemented this paradigm shift in management. We have gone miles correcting the macroeconomics. We have recovered the monetary stability that is the basis for having a healthy economy that grows. We are reducing the structural cost of the Argentine economy that, at the expense of taxes and regulations, has exponentially increased the prices of all goods and services in our economy. And as a result of this change of course, we are steadily establishing the confidence of our country with a risk that was around 3,000 basis points at the time of the elections. And that basically broke 1,200 basis points yesterday. And this is important because we have it precious, let's say, in terms of GDP, which is no less because if the country risk were around 3,000 basis points, which is to return to the fiscal policy of the fiscal degenerates of politics, that would imply a GDP of $400 billion. And with this fiscal policy scheme that we have today, at today's prices, with the country risk of, not of these weeks, but since a week ago, the GDP is $600 billion. That is to say, that returning to the ways of bad fiscal policy would cost us $200 billion. That is, it is not only a lower GDP, but it is a lower GDP per capita. In fact, the budget discussion, if one had done it seriously, approving expenses without considering the resources, which violates the state's financial administration law. And besides, in the Senate, they also violated the Senate statute. Look at what is interesting, what the increase would imply for universities, which would basically be to access the old politics. The old way of doing politics, to ignore the budget restriction, would imply going back to the old ways, and returning to the levels of country risk that we had with the quizerism, with which we would pass from a GDP of $600,000 million to 1 in 400,000 millions of dollars, that is, we would be losing a third of GDP. So, when you take the resources for the universities, if you take the case of 600,000 without the increase, and take the increase with the one of 400,000, the numbers are more or less tied. But in the middle, you reduced GDP per capita, we lost a third of GDP, and also, when you take the impact on GDP in dollars and GDP in pesos, the impact on GDP in pesos is a third or real GDP, which is what it is in dollars. This means that in the middle there is a jump in the real exchange rate that not only causes GDP to fall, and GDP per capita to fall, but exacerbates the increase of the poor and indigent by the sum in the real exchange rate. So, what are we talking about? And that's if the claim was genuine. If in the middle we consider that it is a mere euphemism to defend the jobs of 3 or 4 criminals who use a noble cause, and prostitute it to earn money at the cost of stealing them from students and teachers and the what has to do with the buildings and so on, it seems to me that there is not much more to discuss. And we have come to do the things that are right, regardless of what public opinion says or the terror that many have to tell the truth. We came to finish the courses. And deep down, if they were clean. What is the problem with being audited if they were clean? They haven't done an audit for almost 10 years. All we are asking for is to audit them. But that seems to be putting public education at risk. No, on the contrary, it is to value public education. That is, if they were clean, the principle of disclosure would say that they could clearly show the numbers, but they don't want to do it. And it must be for something then. But what I want to be clear is that getting back on track is not free. It means losing at least a third of GDP. Or, if I just wanted to put it in terms of achievement, this reduction of country risk allows us to go from a GDP of $400 billion to one of $600 billion, just because of the effect that the reduction of country risk has on the value of assets, and what it allows in terms of macroeconomic coordination, that is 50% more. Look at that little number. There is no management. But as I was saying, the consequences of all this is beginning to be seen, for example, with a credit boom never seen before. In November, there were no fees in retail stores, and today there is the 30-year mortgage loan, as if we were Singapore, accompanied by personal and business loans. That is, if you remember, in November of December, we were discussing hyperinflation. We were seeing how we managed to get through the day today is becoming one of the tools of greater upward social mobility. That is to buy a property, and it can be done in 30 years. Therefore, look at whether we have changed the macroeconomic context. I'm not going to be going over all the numbers that I usually give regularly, but I do want to mention the inflation one. Because when one takes the wholesale inflation index in the month of December, that was 54%. That implied an annualized 17,000, and there were all the monetary conditions given for that. There had been validation. And it is an indicator that anticipates retail inflation, and the last record of the wholesaler was 2.1%, that is, 28% annually would come to be. Look, if we have not done a titanic task fixing the monetary problem, and therefore, let's say, this is what explains that there may be another time horizon for investments in Argentina. At the same time, in terms of investments, RIGI continues to plant announcements throughout the country, with very positive projections for the trade and energy balance from now on. The first tranche of the popular laundering that we promoted has exceeded all kinds of expectations, surpassing even the first tranche of the laundering of the Macri administration that had been a success there. That is, when you look at the dollar deposits, the number is really shocking what is happening. But sometimes it seems that, I do not know if there is a lack of historical perspective, or there is ignorance or bad intention, or all together at once. As a result, private sector dollar deposits are at record levels today. Every day it becomes easier to set up a company in Argentina. And we all know what happens to wages when there are more companies competing with each other to attract the same number of workers. In this sense, we continue to work every day untying the Gordian knot that the exegetes of the impoverishing model built. All this in pursuit of continuing to climb steps in terms of economic freedom that will bring us more savings, more investment, more growth, and greater prosperity. I often say repeatedly that we are working to be the freest country in the world. In fact, the reform of the Bases Law, plus the UN 7023, allows us to have a jump in terms of economic freedom of almost 90 positions. We would happen to be at similar levels to countries like Germany, like Italy, like France. But that's not enough for us. We have 3,200 pending reforms, and you can see the enormous task carried out by our colossal Minister of Deregulation, who is Federico Sturzenegger. And when you see the day-to-day, you are going to realize that without a doubt, when we finish this mandate, without a doubt, we are going to be the freest country in the world, with what that implies in dynamic terms. So, basically, I don't want to stop at making a detailed account of our brief management that you have already heard on other occasions. But I do want to emphasize telling you where this ship leads, which is nothing other than it is the freest country in the world. Many times when I use this expression, I am called crazy and other things more. I also said this in a report. What is the difference between a genius and a madman? The success. Or, when I say that I would like to achieve quality of life levels similar to those of Australia, everyone screams in the sky, as if it were an impossible task. I'm going to tell you something about Australia, a country that I also admire, and for which I have a lot of appreciation. But Australia was a nation founded by convicts. In other words, they went from being the discard of England to becoming global reference. And Argentina used to be the country with the highest GDP per capita in the world in 1895, in the Angus Madison series. If the Australians could, why couldn't we? If we already did it 100 years ago, why couldn't we do it again? Let's think that when Argentina was born as Argentina in 1860 strictly, with the unification of Buenos Aires, Argentina was a country of barbarians, and in 35 years, it became the first world power. If we could do it in the 19th century, why can't we do it now that we also have better technological conditions at a global level? That is to say, we have to cheer up, we have to get out of mediocrity. That is, a powerful Argentina with living standards similar to Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Spain, the United States. It is not the one they like, Ireland. Not only is it not crazy, but it is manifest destiny, if we keep this path. Have no doubts, that is our destiny, if we manage to respect some basic precepts of the economy, such as fiscal balance, monetary stability, and we also manage to bring down that many-headed kraken, that is the Argentine cost. A country where inflation will be just a bad memory. And believe that I am going to achieve it. Where Argentines will have recovered the ability to make economic calculations, and everyone will be able to plan, save, invest, and be the owner of their own destiny. A country where it is the one who produces, and not the state, that chooses which inputs to use, who to hire, who to sell to, and at what price. A country where you can import cutting-edge technology to improve competitiveness without paying 2 or 3 times its value because of confiscatory tariffs. A country where everyone can enjoy the fruit of their labor without fear of being robbed or even killed for something as basic as a cell phone. A country where you can buy televisions for cash and a house in quota, and not the other way around as happened until very recently here. A country where you don't have to cross the border to get a good quality pair of sneakers at a good price. A country with minimum taxes paid with quality services, not with voracious municipalities, provinces, and a national state, charging the same tax 3 times to provide poor services all 3 times. A country where there is no talk of extraordinary profits to charge you more taxes when you had a good year. Because if the moral purpose of every business is to earn money, how can a profit be extraordinary? I want to make a point here because I find it interesting. There is nothing more aberrant than talking about this concept of charging more for extraordinary profits and so on. I guess you guys have a 2-sector economy. I'm going to make it easy. And for some reason, either because people's preferences changed or because there was a problem that caused a negative shock on the supply of one's goods, you have a change of relative prices. Yes, I don't know, suppose, I don't know, an earthquake comes and a part of the economy is lost. Obviously, the goods that were linked to that sector are going to contract the supply, and that is going to make the price higher. That is, that relative price in that sector is going to be higher. The same thing happened when the beard problem appeared. That is, now that higher relative price, that extraordinary profit, is actually a signal that is telling where to allocate capital, where to move capital, how to reallocate capital. Therefore, if you, let's say, punish that extraordinary result, what you are doing is making it difficult, and putting sticks on the wheel to solve the problem. That is, you need that price signal to flow so that the resources are reallocated, and in that way solve the problem. This is the same discussion as the real exchange rate. That they are a nuisance already. Well, luckily the Econachanta have calmed down enough, but I can do the same to him. Let's see, if I have fiscal balance, I have a constant amount of money, I do not have elements of economic policy that are generating an artificial problem. Now if I have a problem in the sector, I'm going to do it with an example. Suppose I have a tradable economy, if not tradable, and for some reason, I don't know, an earthquake comes and breaks half of the non-tradable sector, that would make the price is the non-tradable thing that has to happen. It has to go up. So, in the logic of the economchantis, they would be telling me that the real exchange rate is appreciated, because the price of non-tradable ones would be going up a lot. So then, how would the economchantis want to fix it? Devalua, 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 the exchange rate is plotted, devalua, devalua. It's interesting because if I devalue, that is, I pay attention to them, and devalue, what is the problem? The problem is that I needed to send the resources to the non-tradable sector and devaluing. What do? I break the price signal, and therefore I never finish solving the problem. That is to say, that Argentina has this problem, since we have that damn institution, called the Central Bank of the Argentine Republic, that it uses in the central bank to correct problems in the real sector. No, the problems of the real sector are fixed in the real sector. In other words, the only thing the central bank can do is keep inflation at bay, something we are actively working for. So, if I violate that signal, what happens to me happens. I stop the amount of money, I end up with the fiscal deficit. And obviously the recomposition of relative prices is going to be that the non-tradable ones are more expensive. Why? Because for more than 70, 80, almost 100 years, I was dedicated to breaking the price signal. I mean, it's not free. And this is also important because then when that extraordinary benefit appears, to that entrepreneur who is reaping that extraordinary benefit, I mean, instead of chasing him, he should be giving him a prize. He should be carrying him around. I mean, think about the middle of the pandemic, the need for face masks. Yeah, of course he's going to make a lot of money if there's a furious demand reset. But that guy is the one who is fixing my problems. He is the one who causes me to have a greater number of chin straps. Instead, what happens? If the state gets in and starts touching the prices, what happens? There's going to be less. And on top of that, let's say, because the resources want to move from sector A to sector B, but since I'm weathering the price, sector A is going to destroy me, but sector B is not going to expand. So we have to fight this idea full of envy and resentment from the plane, because the one who earns money is a hero. He is a social benefactor because he does it by selling better quality prices at a better price. So this is not minor, because if Argentina is going to start generating a process of strong economic growth, to the extent that you start generating that process, extraordinary profits are going to be generated. And let's not give room to the shitty lefties who come to say that this is wrong. Because those who are based on envy, hatred, and resentment are going to come and inflate the balls with the Gini coefficient, the inequality. And actually, those guys who are capturing the great benefits are the ones who are not going to make Argentina a great country again. So let's give that battle. I mean, that's why I'm deviating from the original speech, my apologies. But I would love to read your posters, but there is an effect that is called year, and I do not see. I would love to be able to read you, let's see. What does he say? Yes, I have many demands. There are many people proposing that I go to other countries to do the same. I'm going to have a nationality problem. So, I am putting this to you openly, because this is the debate that is going to come in the future. That is to say, from now on, all the news that the Argentine economy is going to give is all good. Moreover, if you take even the worst number that came out, the last one that came out, which was that of poverty, if you decompose between the first quarter and the second quarter, poverty certainly touched 56%. But then in the second it fell 51%, and have no doubt that by the third quarter it will be at 49%. That is, if I take the activity data, the last indicator of the IMEI gave 1.7. If I take the latest data against December seasonally adjusted, the drop in GDP is 0.6. Nothing if we take into account that we have just made the largest fiscal adjustment in the history of mankind. Moreover, it is a heroic exercise does not mean that I am talking about the number that I am going to give, I clarify. But so that you have an idea of the speed of an economy when it grows strongly, suppose 5%. The seasonally adjusted one grows 0.4% monthly.
Cuando crece fuerte, supongamos 5%, el desestacionalizado crece 0,4 mensual.
The last data gave 1.7%. That means that the speed that the last data showed is of an economy that moves at a rate of 23%. That is, you realize, because the other day, I got the reference of a certain imbecile journalist, and I say it in these terms, so that they cannot know if I am talking about a man or a woman, I mean, but he did it on a prime time program, at the 47th minute. So as you can see, we have it well calibrated. We have these criminals well calibrated. But don't think they're going to have to go looking in hostile grid locations. That said, the issue that was published yesterday of 1.5 is great, and yet, what are they doing? You have an economy that was being destroyed, that was on the way to hyper, that we were on the way to exploding poverty, that we were on the way to destroying the level of activity. Because I warn you, an adjustment that was half of the one we made was the one that Dualdi made. I tell you that GDP fell 11%, and in the second quarter, when it was full, it fell 16%. Look at the numbers we're talking about. So, it is clear that when you have the fall, if you compare against the same month of the previous year, it will be negative. Well, the person in question focused everything on that, and not on the seasonally adjusted monthly indicator that the output is showing. That's so they can see the bad intention they have, let's say, because besides, let's say, it's one thing for one to make a mistake once, twice, now one makes a mistake always and always for the same side. An econometrician would say that this is called autocorrelation. Let's say, but well, nothing, let's get out of there, better. But in short, what I want to promote is a country anchored in three fundamental principles that are the right to life, the right to freedom, and the right to property for all Argentines. All this implies a new role for entrepreneurship in the coming Argentina. And I'm going to say it very clearly. I must not and cannot. That is, I must not in moral terms. And I cannot because given the fatal arrogance to be the one who commands the decisions that you must take. You should be the ones to take them, knowing that on this side there is a government that supports you. And that is willing to do everything to make things right. If you don't see what I am fighting to defend the zero deficit, or what I am fighting to maintain zero emission, and everything we are doing deregulating every day, so that it is just easier to invest in Argentina every day. We will persist in our mission, even if the consequence is ostracism. Because as Cicero said, the discredit acquired by doing the right thing is not discredit at all, but it is glory. So I say to you, take risks, invest, innovate, and bet on industry and commerce, because in the new Argentina, the words effort and merit have real meaning and will be rewarded. We came to reconvert Argentina into the great power that it should have never ceased to be, and we know that the key to achieving this is trade. That turns enemies into customers and competitors into collaborators. That is why I come here not to appeal to your humanity, but to your own benefit, whose persecution results in benefits for society. Adam Smith, transformed a little bit, but it's an adaptation, version 2024. Now I'm going to take up left-handedness again. I was caught in a good mood today. There is a phrase repeated ad nauseam by the well-thinking left that says no one saves himself. And what the left does not understand is that the market is precisely the demonstration of this. The first thing that, and this surprises me that you ask an economist, and that an economist does not know what the market is either. This is very serious. Why ask what is the market? And to be answered trying to put into words a supply and demand curve speaks very badly of the professional in question. The market is a process of social cooperation where individuals voluntarily exchange property rights. That is the market. In fact, if you understood each other like that, there is a whole part of the literature that would already be eradicated. Why? Because there could be no market failures. Because for there to be market failure, there should be coercion. But if it is coercion, then they are not voluntary, which violates the definition of the market. Take a look at Alberto Venegas Lynch Jr.'s definition of liberalism. Liberalism is the unrestricted respect for the life project of others based on the principle of non-aggression, and in defense of the right to life, liberty, and property. Therefore, there can be no coercion, because if you are coercing, you are curtailing freedom, or you are impacting on property rights. In that sense, the first thing that these people fail is that they do not know what the market is, and the truth is that many economists do not know either. But then, there is a wonderful report by Alejandro Fantino to my former ballotage competitor, and what are you going to tell him? That the market is going to make the sewer or the road to such a person in a vulnerable sector. And he tells her to end with the little kiss that the market saves you. We have been doing the opposite for 40 years, and they still don't have it. With which we charge him taxes, we charge him everything, and the result is gone, with which I say, at least. I'm not going to have anything, but at least I have more money in my pocket. Apart from that I can coordinate with other people and do it. So, in a free market, in order to save ourselves, we must be useful to a third party, providing better quality goods or services, at a better price. This triggers a virtuous circle in which everything benefits mutually, back to the idea of the invisible hand. I'm with Dad today, I'm intense. I took out the flag of Scotland and took it out to empty. It must be because I started listening to Ross Stewart. At the same time, it is the multiplication of wealth that allows us to carry out the greatest works of charity and philanthropy known to man. It is not by receiving benefits, but by providing services that we make the whole grow. That is why it is in honor of the great fathers of this country that we want to put Argentina back on the path of sustained growth. Because as Pericles said, those who prove their worth with deeds should receive their homage with deeds. We did not come to fill our mouths by inaugurating small squares, cultural centers, or shabby routes with the names of Alberto and Roca, or Sarmiento. We came to raise the testimony that 100 years of infamy let fall, and thus put Argentina back as the protagonist of the history of the world, as it should have always been. Thank you all very much. God bless the Argentines. May the forces of heaven be with us, and long live fucking freedom. Within the framework of the opening of the 35th Plenary Assembly of the Latin American Business Council, CEAL, we have listened to the President of the Argentine nation, Dr. Javier Milei. Greeted at this moment by the local authorities, and greeting the rest of the participants, we must inform that then the President of the nation will proceed to withdraw from the premises to continue with his work agenda. May you have an excellent continuity in this journey. Thank you for everything, and until always.
To the retirement of the President of the Republic of Argentina, May